The families who braved the wilderness winters carried with them knowledge that most of us have long forgotten. They knew how to transform a rough-hewn log shelter into a sanctuary, even when the outside world sank to 40 degrees below zero. They perfected ways to keep a fire alive for 12 straight hours, not with technology or convenience, but with patience and precision. Their insulation was not fiberglass or factory-made padding. It was moss, clay, horsehair, and mud, arranged so cleverly that it rivaled modern methods. And when everything failed, when the coals went dark, when snowstorms sealed, the doors shut for weeks, they had emergency practices that spelled the difference between life and death. In our present world of radiators, heated blankets, and glowing phone screens warning us about the forecast, we've lost connection with what it truly meant to survive the night when failure meant never seeing morning. How did they do it? What improvised engineering did they weave from logs and stone? And why is it that so little remains of these intricate systems our ancestors once lived and died by? Before we begin, settle yourself. Adjust your pillow, tuck the blanket under your chin, because where we're about to go, comfort is scarce. Tonight, it is the Dakota frontier, the winter of 1885. The first sensation is pain. The air against your face feels like a slap, harsh and unrelenting. Your eyes blink open to darkness, a winter morning before dawn. The cabin breathes cold like a living thing. Outside, the mercury has plunged to 30 below. Inside, not much warmer. Your nose stings, your cheeks ache, while the rest of your body hides under layers of quilts and furs scavenged through years of necessity. Beside you, your younger brothers breathe slow clouds into the frozen air. The fire has dwindled to a bed of weak embers glowing faintly inside the iron-bellied stove across the single-room cabin. If those embers had died during the night, you would already be in grave danger. Not discomfort, not a call to the repairman, real danger. Families on the frontier knew a stove gone cold in January meant that by sunrise, frost could claim lives. Your father, Elias Hallberg, is already stirring. You hear the weight of him leaving the bed, the creak of planks beneath his feet. Unlike you, he sleeps in nearly full clothing through winter nights, layers of wool and canvas stiff with age. He does not shiver as he crosses the icy floor, though you know he feels it. His movements are practiced, every step toward the stove carrying quiet urgency. "Light, Anna," he whispers. Your mother fumbles in the dark, striking a match against the worn table. The sudden flare illuminates her face, pale, weary, lashes tipped with frost from her own breath. She touches the flame to a stub of tallow candle, and a dim glow spills into the cabin. "Colder than the devil's breath," your father mutters, tugging the stove door. The iron hinges groan in protest, brittle from the deep cold. The sound, shrill as it is, brings relief. It means the metal has held. A crack or split would spell disaster. He leans down, peers into the firebox, and exhales slowly. "Still alive," he says, relief hidden but clear. "Bring the kindling." This is no ordinary chore. You're witnessing the delicate resuscitation of a fire, a skill refined through trial, error, and bitter winters. Your father selects splinters of pine shaved thin weeks earlier, kept bone dry in a wooden box close to the stove. He doesn't toss them in at random. Instead, he builds a small lattice, air spaces left with intention, every stick placed to coax the embers. "Down to the last of this batch," he mutters. Then, louder, "Jonas, we'll cut more today." That's you, 12 years old, already counted among the workers of the household. You nod silently from the bed, though he cannot see it in the dim light. He lowers his face near the opening and blows, not sharp puffs but slow, even breaths, the kind you've watched him practice since you were old enough to remember. Oxygen without scattering heat. A faint flicker appears, hesitant, then grows. He layers slightly larger pieces, shaping them like a miniature log cabin. The fire responds, climbing upward, orange licking at the pine. "Good," he whispers. Across the room, your sister Marta slips from under her covers, wrapping a shawl around her nightdress. She checks the water bucket by the window, rapping its surface with her knuckles. "Solid ice," she reports. "Then we'll melt snow again," your mother sighs, pulling a wool skirt over her gown without removing the layer beneath. Layers save lives. Your younger siblings remain a bundled mass, their small bodies pressed close, radiating what heat they can. At 6, 4, and barely 2 years old, they'll stay in bed until the room warms. 35 below, maybe worse, your father judges, no thermometer needed. A lifetime outdoors has honed his body into its own instrument. "Colder than last January?" your mother asks. He shakes his head. "Not yet, but the season's far from over." Bit by bit, he feeds the fire, resisting the urge to hurry. Too much wood, too soon, would smother it. This is patience turned into ritual, and the ritual is survival. "Jonas," your mother calls softly, "water for breakfast." You groan, though not aloud. Sliding from beneath the quilts feels like stepping into an ice bath. The cold hits instantly, burning your skin as though with needles. Your fingers clumsy. You dress in the half-light, wool socks doubled, trousers, thick shirt, and your father's old scarf. Outside, the pre-dawn world sparkles with cruel beauty. Stars stab through the black sky, the snow glowing faintly with reflected starlight. Your breath crystallizes the instant it leaves your lips. The shed door has frozen shut, and it takes 3 hard shoulders to break it open. Inside, you grab the snow shovel and trudge toward untouched drifts at the edge of the clearing. The snow squeaks with each step, that high-pitched sound only born of the coldest nights. You work quickly, scooping and packing the powder into the bucket until it mounds high. Your lungs burn, and your hands ache inside your mittens before long. Back inside, warmth greets you subtle, but there. The fire has taken hold, flames curling around newly placed logs. The stove pings as it expands, alive again. "Good," your mother says, taking the bucket from your stiff hands. She sets it beside the stove to melt, careful not to place it too close where sudden steam might crack the iron. "Help your father now." He is already at the woodpile, a precise stack against the far wall. Each piece sorted by species and size, the work of months of felling, splitting, and hauling. He chooses oak this morning, dense, steady burning, not the fast flare of pine or the slow overnight coals of hickory. Oak for breakfast fires. He hands you one, thick as your wrist, and you feel its weight, its moisture, its promise of hours of heat. "Remember, boy," he says softly, "this isn't just a fire. It's the engine that keeps us alive. One mistake, and winter wins." By the time breakfast mush simmers on the stove, the cabin has warmed to near livable. The youngest stir, peeking from under their quilts, teeth chattering but faces relieved. The frost still clings to the log walls, gleaming like glass in the firelight, but the circle near the stove has become a sanctuary. Your father pulls on his fur-lined coat and steps outside to check the animals. The blast of cold that enters as the door opens is sharp enough to make you wince. He closes it fast, vanishing into the white dark. Inside, you place heated stones, fist-sized rocks, kept near the stove since yesterday, under quilts at the foot of each bed. The children sigh as the warmth spreads. And as you work, you realize this isn't routine. It is science. It is architecture. It is an inheritance of skill so precise that each step is as important as a heartbeat. A chain of actions that stands between your family and the silence waiting in the cold outside. The saw sings through frozen oak, each stroke echoing in the still forest air. Your father's breath clouds thick around his scarf as he works the long blade with steady rhythm. You match his movement, pulling, then yielding, the steel teeth biting deeper with each pass. The tree groans under its own weight. Soon it will surrender. Pine burns fast, your father says between strokes, his words punctuated by the rasp of metal on wood. Good for starting or quick warmth in the morning, but it leaves tar in the chimney. That's creosote. Build too much of it, and one stray spark could burn the whole place down. You nod, though you've heard this lesson before. On the frontier, knowledge repeats itself until it's carved into your bones. Now oak gives slow, steady heat, coals that last, and hickory, he smiles faintly. Hickory's the king. Burn it right, and the stove holds fire till dawn. The tree cracks. Back, he shouts, and you both step clear as the oak topples with a thunderous crash, shaking the earth beneath your boots. Branches splinter, snow cascades in clouds. Silence follows, deep and heavy. Good fall, your father mutters, eyes scanning for broken hangers that might pose danger. None. The work now shifts from felling to splitting. He sets aside the saw and lifts his axe, its handle polished from years of use. Watch where I place the wedge, he instructs, kneeling over a cut section of trunk. He finds a natural line in the grain, sets the iron wedge, and strikes it with the flat of his axe. The oak resists, shuddering under the blow. Another strike, then another, until with a sharp crack the round splits, revealing pale, fresh wood inside. Always work with the grain, Jonas, he says, pointing at the line running true through the heart of the log. Wood wants to split its own way. Fight it, and you'll break your back. You heft your own wedge, awkward at first, but with each swing the rhythm settles into your muscles. Crack after crack, halves turn to quarters, quarters to stove-ready pieces. It's punishing work. The cold gnaws at your fingers, stiffening them even as sweat trickles beneath your scarf. By the time the sun climbs higher, you've reduced a quarter of the oak to a neat pile of split firewood stacked on the sled. Eat, your father says, lowering himself onto the fallen trunk. From his coat he produces a small cloth bundle, rough cornbread and strips of venison jerky, dried hard as leather. Not much, but it fuels you. The bread is cold, the meat tougher than your jaw would like, but the calories matter more than taste. You chew in silence, aware of the danger hidden in rest. Sweat turns icy, creeping chill into your skin. Sit too long, and the cold reclaims you. Your father stands again, brushing snow from his coat. One pine next, then we head home. Storms rolling in. You glance upward. The sky that had been bright and clear has dulled to a flat grey, edges darkening. Wind threads through the pines, making the forest whisper uneasily. The pine falls faster than the oak, its softer wood yielding easily to the saw. Splitting goes quickly too, resinous splinters catching the sunlight like amber. But the wind strengthens as you work, stinging your cheeks with tiny ice grains. No hickory today, your father decides. What we have will do. Together, you stack the sled, the pile rising nearly to your shoulder. The ropes stretch as he knots them tight, securing the load against the jolting ride home. He estimates the weight with a glance. Half a cord. Enough for 4 days if we ration. Harnessed with leather straps, you and he lean into the sled, dragging the heavy load across the snow-packed trail. Each step burns your thighs, the straps biting your shoulders, but the sled slides more smoothly than you expect. Still, the journey back is slower. The forest no longer feels sheltering, it feels watchful, the wind pushing harder, urgency in its howl. When at last the cabin appears through the trees, relief softens your father's face, but his eyes shift westward, toward the bruise-coloured horizon. Blizzard, within the hour, he mutters. At the door, your mother pulls you both inside, brushing snow from your coat. I feared the worst, she admits. Behind her, the cabin radiates warmth, a miracle after the frozen labour outdoors. Marta tends the stove, iron poker in hand, eyes bright with responsibility. Steady burn, your father notes after checking her work. Good coal bed, well done. She beams under the rare praise. There's no time to linger. The wood must be stacked indoors before the storm hits. You and your father work in tandem, he passing armloads through the door, you stacking them against the far wall. Each piece is wiped free of snow before placement. Moisture in the indoor pile would mean smoke, inefficiency, wasted heat. The stack grows taller, a wall of insurance against the cold. The wind rises to a shriek outside, rattling shutters, forcing snow through unseen cracks. The last armload passes in, the door slams shut, and the storm descends. Inside, your father adjusts the damper, slowing the fire's breath. The stove glows orange, iron pinging as it expands with heat. "We can ride it out," he says simply, but the storm has teeth. Snow lashes the cabin, probing for weaknesses. The north window surrenders first, a thin line of snow forming along the sill. Your father kneels, frowning. Chinking's failed. From storage he retrieves a clay pot, warmed near the stove, filled with a mixture of creek-bed soil, wood ash, and hair. Your mother opens a pouch of fibers, saved from shearing and butchering goat, sheep, even strands of human hair. Nothing wasted. Together they knead the mixture, pressing it into the gap with expert hands, sealing the breach in minutes. "This will hold till spring," he declares, flexing his stiff fingers. The memory of another family comes to mind, the Ericsons, lost in a February freeze when their cabin walls gave way to drafts. The silence that follows the story weighs heavy until little Samuel, barely 6, whispers, "Will we freeze too, Papa?" Your father's voice is steady. "No, son, our walls are strong. We built them with care." And it's true. The cabin's double walls, packed with moss and sealed with clay, hold the line against the storm's assault. Evening arrives. The wind howls, the walls groan. But within your cabin the stove radiates. Snow melts into water for mush and coffee, and heated stones are tucked into quilts for the children's beds. Every sound, every flicker of firelight is a reminder. Survival is not chance. It is skill. It is vigilance. As you lay another log into the stove, your father nods, his eyes on the glowing coals. "Remember this, Jonas. The fire is more than heat. It's life itself." The fire crisis comes without warning. One moment the stove glows steady, its iron sides radiating life-saving heat. The next, your father is on his feet, muttering low but urgent. Too low, coals are dying. Then comes the splintering sound. At first you think it's the wind tearing at the cabin, but no, it's your father, breaking apart a wooden chair. The creak of nails, the crack of joints, sharp reports in the darkened room. "Watch your hands," he cautions calmly, feeding the broken pieces into the stove. The faint glow flares as dry wood catches, but the danger is real. A fire too far gone could leave the cabin freezing within the hour. The children stir, eyes wide, voices trembling. Emma gathers them, pulling quilts closer to the stove. Even in emergencies, everyone knows their role. Efficiency is survival. Your mother's voice cuts through. "Body heat shelter?" Your father nods. "Yes, better safe than sorry." It's a technique rarely used, reserved for the nights when the cold pushes past 40 below. You've only seen it twice before. Tonight makes a third. Together, you and Emma shove the table against the far wall, away from windows. Your parents drape quilts over it, sealing edges to the floor, forming a crude tent. A simple structure, but ingenious in its effect. Inside, 6 bodies and thick bedding will create a pocket of warmth, sometimes 30 degrees higher than the rest of the cabin. "Bring your bedding," Emma directs the younger boys. Little Samuel and Michael obey without complaint, dragging blankets across the plank floor. Catherine, too small to understand, whimpers softly until your mother gathers her into the center of the makeshift shelter. Your father inspects the quilt walls. No gaps, keep it sealed. His voice carries the weight of generations who learned the hard way. Inside the cocoon, the warmth builds quickly. You settle at the edge. Emma beside you, the younger children tucked safe in the middle. Already, Catherine has drifted back to sleep, her tiny chest rising and falling in rhythm with the storm's howl outside. Your father tends the stove, feeding it measured pieces, adjusting the damper. He moves like a sentinel, quiet, steady, watchful. 2-hour shifts, your mother says firmly. We all need rest. They agree. He takes first watch, she the second. Then you and Emma share the final hours before dawn. Time passes strangely inside the shelter. The storm screams louder, battering the walls, finding cracks and seams to exploit. Sometimes snow hisses through, caught in the glow of the firelight. But within your cocoon, warmth gathers. Cotton kills, your mother reminds, as she helps the children adjust layers. Wool is king, holding heat even when damp. Everyone wears wool socks dry, ones checked and replaced before bed. Caps pulled low over ears, mittens for the smallest hands. Even here, inside, there's no relaxing of the rules. The principle is simple. Dry feet, covered heads, sealed warmth. Miss one, and the cold will claim you. Despite the storm's fury, you find yourself drifting into sleep. When your father shakes you, awake for watch duty, it feels as though only minutes have passed. He slides into the shelter beside your mother, his body still radiating chill from tending the fire. 40 below, maybe colder, he reports in a whisper. Thermometer won't measure lower. You and Emma sit near the stove, bundled in layers, mittens thick but removable for fire tending. Every 30 minutes, you add exactly 2 pieces of wood, careful not to smother the flames. Between tasks, you share a tin of bitter coffee. The warmth seeps through your chest, fighting the creeping numbness of the long night. Remember the Petersons? Emma whispers, eyes on the fire. You nod. Their poorly built cabin had nearly cost them their lives the winter before. They had slaughtered their only cow, their last desperate food, and by spring were talking of leaving. Not everyone is cut out for these winters. The hours crawl. The storm pounds the walls without mercy. You check window coverings, feel for drafts, press your hand against the chinking your father repaired only days ago, still holding, still strong. At last, a pale light seeps through the oiled paper on the east window. Dawn. Your father emerges from the shelter, examining the stove with a craftsman's eye. Good work, he says simply. The coal bed glows red, proof you tended it well. On the frontier, such praise means everything. The family dismantles the shelter, folding quilts, returning the table. Catherine giggles as if it were all a game, unaware of how close the night came to danger. Outside, the blizzard has ended, but the cold remains, sharp and deadly. 43 below, your father reports after checking the north wall thermometer. His voice holds no drama, only fact. Life resumes. The water bucket is iced solid, cracked open with an axe. Breakfast is meager but hot. The stove steams, the cabin breathes. Your family has passed another test. Later that morning, your father turns to you. We'll check the neighbors. You nod, pulling on heavy layers. This time, the journey is not just about your family. Survival on the frontier is never solitary. The McKinnon family's cabin lies a mile away. New arrivals, uncertain in their skills, untested by real winter. You and your father set out, steps measured, scarves rimed with ice before you've crossed the clearing. Snow squeaks underfoot, that strange sound that only comes in the deepest cold. Your father's voice carries muffled through his scarf. Pace yourself. Too fast. You sweat. Sweat freezes. Then you die. When the McKinnon place comes into sight, the signs are bad. Snow poorly banked against the walls. Thin smoke from the chimney. No paths cleared since the storm. Your father calls out from 50 yards, as custom demands. At last, the door cracks open. Henry McKinnon's face appears, gaunt and reddened. Relief flashes across his features. Inside, the scene is worse. Bedding piled near the stove, furniture broken for firewood. Martha sits pale, the children clinging to her sides. The room stinks of stale air, the chimney burning inefficiently. "We're nearly out," Henry admits, shame in his voice. "Didn't think it had come this early." Your father wastes no words. "We'll fix it." For 2 hours, you work side by side, clearing drifts from the root cellar, showing Henry how to bank snow properly, adjusting the stove damper. Your father demonstrates fire management, stacking wood for efficiency rather than panic. Martha listens, eyes bright, memorizing each step. "How do you keep your little one's feet warm?" she asks quietly. Your father explains the heated stone trick, wrapping rocks from the stove in cloth for bed warmth. She nods, determined to try. By midday, the McKinnon cabin feels less desperate. Food retrieved, fire steady, gaps sealed. They are still weak, but no longer doomed. "We can't thank you enough," Henry says as you prepare to leave. He presses a small loaf of white bread into your hands, their last flour transformed into gratitude. "No thanks needed," your father replies. "Old Jim Barker saved us our first winter. Now it's your turn." That is the frontier code. Survival knowledge passed hand to hand, life for life. As you walk back through the snow, the sky clear and cruel, you ask quietly, "Will they make it?" Your father answers without hesitation, "They will now. Another day, and we'd be burying them." His eyes narrow against the sun glare. "It'll be Martha who keeps them alive." She was listening. Henry's still got too much pride. You say nothing, but the truth settles inside you like a stone. Out here, pride is a luxury no one can afford. By the time the storm has passed, the valley lies beneath a frozen sky of crystalline blue. The air is sharp as broken glass, the sunlight dazzling across snowdrifts sculpted into ridges and waves. Temperatures rise slightly, only 20 below now, but the cold still clings to everything like a living presence. Your father decides it's time to check on the older neighbor, Mr. Patterson, whose cabin rests 2 miles east. Unlike the inexperienced McKinnons, Patterson is a veteran of these winters. His concern isn't ignorance, but age. Decades of frontier survival have made him skilled, but years have worn away the strength needed to carry it all out alone. Your mother packs a small parcel, venison strips, dried apples, and half a loaf of bread. Not just food, but a message of care. On the frontier, such gestures mean survival. The walk is long, the cold punishing, but Patterson's place shows reassuring signs even from a distance. Snow neatly banked against walls, paths cut to the woodpile, chimney breathing a steady plume. He greets you at the door, voice rough but steady. Thought you two had frozen solid in that blow. His eyes twinkle despite his 70-odd years, proof that hardship has hardened, not broken him. Inside, his cabin is a study in order. Firewood, stacked by type and size. Shelves of food labeled and accessible. His bed raised well above the icy floor. He waves a hand as if to dismiss concern. "Been at this too long not to know what I need." Your father nods but checks anyway, eyes scanning with the efficiency of one who never leaves survival to chance. The visit is short, but not without meaning. Before you leave, Patterson admits what might be harder than facing blizzards. "Could use the company at Henderson's next week. Been fiddling with a new snowshoe binding I'd like to show off." That honesty, the recognition that survival isn't only physical but social, is wisdom forged by years. Alone, even the strongest man falters. On the return walk, your father turns the lesson toward you. "Community is as important as firewood," he says through his scarf. "The cold will kill fast, but loneliness kills slow and just as sure." The words settle deep. You realize survival is not only the stove's glow, but the hands that built it, the neighbors who share knowledge, the gatherings that keep minds steady in the dark months. Preparations for the Henderson gathering begin immediately. Your mother sorts through jars and bundles, selecting food to contribute. Emma works furiously on a new pair of mittens lined with rabbit fur, eager to demonstrate her technique. Even the younger boys carve toys from scraps of wood, small gifts for other children. These aren't luxuries, they are investments in the community's shared wisdom. Each family brings not just food, but knowledge. A better way to spin wool, a method of drying berries, a clever repair for drafty windows. Knowledge is currency here, and it circulates to keep everyone alive. The night before departure, your father surprises the family. "The McKinnons will stay with us tomorrow," he announces. "Temperatures are dropping again. Better they travel to Henderson's from here." Your mother agrees without hesitation. Crowding means less food, tighter sleeping arrangements, but also more warmth. Survival always balances sacrifice and gain. By dawn, their family arrives. Henry, Martha, and the two little ones. They look weary, but relieved to step into a cabin where fire management and insulation are second nature. During the night, extra quilts spread across the floor turn inconvenience into comfort. 10 bodies in one cabin mean more warmth, and in the morning, even the little ones laugh at the novelty. The Henderson place lies 5 miles away. In good weather, a simple journey. In deep cold, a dangerous expedition. Your father plans with precision. 2 sleds, one for supplies, one for children. Each adult carries a whistle for whiteout separation. Each bundle contains fire-starting kits, food, and canvas for emergency shelter. Before departure, your mother insists on hot tea for everyone. Hydrate before we go. Frozen bodies fail faster when thirsty. Another rule carried forward from generations who measured survival in such small details. The group sets out. 10 figures strung across the snowfield, adults forming a protective perimeter, children at the heart. The rhythm of feet crunching through drifts, the squeak that only comes at 20 below, becomes the morning's music. For the first hour, all is well. Then your father halts, scanning the sky. To the northwest, a smear of grey has crept into the blue. "Weather's shifting," he announces, his voice steady but firm. "We'll push faster." The change comes quick. Wind stiffens, lashing with icy needles. The temperature drops with startling speed. Within minutes, the world feels hostile again. "There's the Carson Line Shack, half a mile east," your father decides. "We shelter there. No one questions it." Henry nods immediately, pride replaced by respect after last week's lessons. The group veers toward the rise where the shack slumps, half buried. It looks miserable, sagging under age and snow. But to weary travelers, it's salvation. While you circle the children in motion, never still, never letting cold creep into their bones, your father and Henry check the structure. "It'll do," your father calls at last. "Get everyone inside." The shack is dark, cramped, but it blocks the wind. Already, the difference is life-saving. Your father sets to work at once, pulling char cloth and birch bark from his fire kit. "Single match," he declares, striking carefully. The flame catches, feeds on resinous pine splinters, grows into a fragile but determined fire in the old hearth. Heat spreads slowly, but the children's shivering eases. Emma organizes a game to keep them laughing, while your mother stirs a soup from dried meat and barley in her traveling pot. "Hot broth saves more lives than bravery," she murmurs. Your father inspects every extremity, pausing longest at little Peter McKinnon's damp foot. "This could have been frostbite," he says gravely, warming it slowly, replacing the sock with a dry wrap. The lesson is unspoken but clear. Small mistakes grow fatal in such weather. That night, the storm howls outside, but inside the shack, a rhythm of survival takes hold. Fire is tended in shifts. Children sleep in the middle, adults in a ring. Every 2 hours, someone checks fingers, toes, noses. Even exhaustion bows before discipline. By dawn, the storm fades. Sunlight filters pale and weak through cracks in the walls. The air outside is still deadly, but the danger has passed. Before leaving, your father pauses at the hearth. He lays fresh kindling, leaves dry tinder, arranges the fire for the next soul who might stumble in from the snow. "Never leave it empty," he says. "Someone else will need it." The trek resumes, the sky clearing, snow glinting like glass shards. By midday, the Henderson cabin appears, smoke curling against the blue. Relief spreads silently among the group. Inside, the gathering is already underway. Families crowd together, sharing food and laughter, demonstrating mittens and spinning techniques, trading news. No one questions your delay. The storm itself told the story. You sit by the fire, listening. Spinning wheels hum, children chatter, voices rise and fall in the exchange of knowledge. And you realize the truth of what your father said. Survival here is never just about wood and fire. It's about hands joined together. Wisdom passed freely, lives intertwined. This is the genius of frontier winter survival, not only the technical skills, but the community that carried them. Individuals endured storms, communities endured winters. The morning after the storm breaks finds you rising from quilts still heavy with warmth, but the cabin air carries the unmistakable edge of bitter cold. Even with walls insulated by moss and double logs, the night has drained much of the fire's strength. Your father moves with quiet urgency, checking the stove, coaxing coals with steady breaths. You watch the ritual unfold, a practiced dance of tinder, kindling, and patience. It isn't fire-making, it's fire-saving. He builds carefully, never rushing, stacking pine splinters with the precision of a craftsman who knows mistakes cost dearly. The flame leaps at last, small but alive. You feel relief ripple through the cabin as warmth begins to push back against the night's grip. Emma stirs beside the younger children, wrapping shawls around their shoulders. Your mother pours water from a half-frozen bucket into a kettle, breaking ice with practiced taps of her ladle. "Always start the day with fire and water," your father says. "Everything else can wait." The wisdom is simple but absolute. Without fire, there is no warmth. Without water, there is no life. And so, each morning on the frontier begins with the same sacred duties, repeated endlessly, like prayers whispered to survival itself. Outside, dawn creeps across a valley rimmed with snowdrifts as high as rooftops. The world glitters with a deadly beauty, and you know what your father says is true. Comfort begins only after the fire holds steady. The fire grows stronger, snapping with tiny sparks that echo softly against the cabin's log walls. The stove begins to creak and ping as the metal expands under heat. It's a sound that, on the frontier, is as reassuring as a church bell. It means life has returned to the cabin. Your mother sets the kettle of snow near the fire. Slowly, it begins to melt, first softening into slush, then yielding to liquid water. She stirs occasionally with a wooden spoon, careful not to let it boil too quickly. "Snow doesn't give much water," she reminds you. "Takes a bucket full to make a pot." Emma helps by shoveling more clean snow from outside, her breath puffing into clouds as she rushes back in with red cheeks and frost-dusted hair. The bucket she carries is heaped high, yet it shrinks to half its size once melted. In this world, every drop matters. Melted snow is drinking water, cooking water, washing water. There is no faucet to open, no pump to prime. Only the labor of gathering and melting, repeated endlessly through the winter months. As the pot finally simmers, your father dips a ladle and sips cautiously. "Good," he says, handing it to you. The water is faintly sweet, carrying the taste of clean, untouched snow. It warms you all the way down, a reminder that even in the harshest cold, the land still provides if you know how to take it. Your little brothers stir awake, whining softly, their teeth chattering as they emerge from their shared bed. Your mother pours each of them a tin cup, warming their bellies before they dare step onto the frozen floor. Even the family dog edges closer to the stove, stretching his paws toward the heat. Outside, the world is silent except for the groaning trees under their weight of snow. Inside, life centers around this single ritual: snow into water, water into warmth, warmth into survival. With water warming on the stove and the children sipping from their tin cups, your father turns his attention back to the firewood, stacked neatly against the wall. He runs his hand over the pieces, selecting one as carefully as if choosing a tool for surgery. "Oak for the morning fire," he says, handing you a thick log. "Slow and steady. We'll save the hickory for night." You've heard this lesson before, but he repeats it as though it were scripture. And perhaps it island. On the frontier, wood isn't just fuel, it's knowledge, strategy, and survival combined. Pine burns bright and fast, perfect for starting a blaze but dangerous if relied upon too heavily. It spits sap, coats chimneys with creosote, and vanishes too quickly into ash. Oak, dense and heavy, gives long, even heat, the backbone of any winter supply. Hickory, the crown jewel of firewood, burns hot and lasts longest of all, often leaving live coals that glow well into the morning hours. Each species is a chapter in a manual written by generations of settlers, learned not from books but from bitter experience. Families who burned the wrong wood at the wrong time found themselves with a dead fire and a frozen cabin by dawn. Your father demonstrates the art of banking the fire, sliding an oak log against the glowing coals, adjusting the damper to slow the flow of air. Think of it like breathing, he tells you. Too much air, and it races itself to death. Too little, and it suffocates. A good fire breathes like a man at rest, slow, steady, calm. You nod, watching carefully. Every movement has purpose. Every adjustment carries weight. This is more than tending a stove, it's managing an entire thermal system, a delicate balance between wood, air, heat, and time. Emma kneels beside the stack, sorting pieces by size. Smaller splits for midday when the cabin will be busy, thicker logs for night when silence will fall. She knows as well as you do that mistakes aren't allowed here. Every log burned unwisely is one less shield against the cold to come. The science of wood, simple to the eye, but profound to the hand that wields it. On this morning, as the stove glows red and the cabin warms, you begin to understand why your father treats each log like treasure. For in truth, it island, the stove hums now with steady heat, its iron sides radiating warmth into the heart of the cabin. Already the circle closest to the fire feels almost comfortable. But your father reminds everyone that warmth isn't only about fire, it's about layers, arrangement, and vigilance. Layers save lives, your mother says quietly as she helps the younger children dress. She starts with wool socks, thick and scratchy, but dependable. Then comes another pair, smaller, fitted over the first. Tiny feet disappear into a fortress of warmth before they touch the icy floorboards. Shirts and trousers stay on from the night, but additional garments are added. Shawls wrapped twice around shoulders, scarves tucked carefully at collars, mittens hanging from strings so they won't be lost. Even indoors, no one is without layers. The frontier rule is clear: once heat leaves the body, it's nearly impossible to call back. Emma ties a woolen cap snug beneath little Michael's chin. "Heads lose heat fastest," she says, echoing your mother's teaching. At 6 years old, Michael already knows the phrase by heart. William, 2 years older, repeats it like a chant as he wriggles into his own cap. Head first, always head first. Even baby Catherine, still too young to speak, gets her share of preparation. Your mother wraps her in a quilt so thick it swallows her small body entirely, leaving only her eyes peeking out. Those eyes follow the fire with quiet wonder, as if even she understands that the dancing flames mean life. Your father adjusts the quilts hanging over the windows. Each is checked, retucked, and pressed tight against the oiled paper covering the glass. A hand placed along the edge reveals faint drafts, quickly blocked with stuffed rags. Heat is a jealous thing, he says softly. It leaves at the first chance it gets. You have to hold it tight, like water in a leaky bucket. You pull your own shawl closer, breathing in the faint scent of lanolin from the wool. The cabin feels secure now, fire roaring, children wrapped, windows sealed, but no one relaxes completely. Winter on the frontier never allows true rest. It demands layers upon layers, vigilance upon vigilance, a constant weaving of defenses against the cold that presses from every side. And so the day begins. Fire carefully managed, clothing layered like armor, drafts hunted and sealed. A family wrapped not just in woolen quilts, but in the quiet determination to endure. The fire has grown into a steady, glowing heart at the center of the cabin. Its light throws long shadows across the plank floor, dancing gently against the quilt-covered walls. The air closest to the stove is warm enough now that breath no longer hangs visibly in front of your face, though the corners of the room still hold on to icy drafts. Here, survival is not a matter of absolute warmth, but of balance, maintaining enough heat to live while conserving the precious fuel that creates it. Your father, Thomas, squats beside the woodpile stored indoors, his hand brushing over the carefully stacked logs. Each piece tells its own story. Pine for quick ignition, oak for steady burn, hickory for coals that last into morning. His choices are deliberate, practiced, and never hurried. He selects one thick oak log and one medium hickory, setting them aside for later in the day when the fire must carry the family through the bitter afternoon hours. "John," he calls softly, motioning to you. "Come, feel this." He presses your hand to the smooth grain of the oak, then the dense ridges of the hickory. Even through your stiff gloves, you sense the difference. Oak gives you heat like a steady heartbeat, he explains. Hickory burns longer, deeper. Remember this when you choose your wood. A wrong choice isn't just waste, it could cost us a night of warmth. You nod, committing the lesson to memory. These instructions, repeated daily, are more than chores. They are survival mathematics disguised as ordinary conversation. Your mother, Sarah, tends to the pot simmering gently on the stove. The water from melted snow is now bubbling, and she sprinkles cornmeal in slowly, stirring to keep it from clumping. The mush thickens into a porridge, plain but sustaining. She adds a thin drizzle of molasses, one of the family's most treasured supplies. The smell of sweetness briefly overpowers the smoky air, lifting spirits. "A treat for strength," she says quietly, ladling the mush into small tin bowls. The younger children stir from their quilts, noses red, hair tangled, but eyes bright at the sight of food. William, 6, sits cross-legged with his bowl, blowing steam from the top before daring a bite. Michael, only 4, clutches his spoon awkwardly, spilling more than he eats. Little Catherine, wrapped tight in her mother's arms, sucks at a softened corner of bread dipped into the porridge. "Eat quick before it cools," your mother warns. In this cold, food loses heat faster than mouths can consume it. A bowl left untouched for 5 minutes can harden into icy lumps, more difficult to eat and harder still to digest. Every calorie matters. Every swallow of warmth is another hour of endurance. Outside, dawn has lifted into a pale grey sky. Through a crack in the window covering, you glimpse the frozen world beyond. Snowdrifts piled like white dunes, the outlines of skeletal trees glazed with frost. The air is so still that even smoke rising from the chimney ascends in a perfectly straight line, no wind to carry it away. But your father frowns at the sight. "Too still," he mutters, "means the storm's holding its breath." After breakfast, chores begin in earnest. Emma, 15, wraps herself in a shawl and checks on the water bucket. Already, the surface has iced over again. She cracks it with the iron poker, stirring the slush into something usable. "We'll need more snow by midday," she says, her voice resigned. The endless cycle of melting, stirring, and replenishing never ends during winter. Your father motions for you to follow him outside. Wood first, he says. Together, you step into the biting cold. It steals your breath instantly, frosting your eyelashes, making your nostrils sting. The snow beneath your boots squeaks a sound you've come to recognize as the mark of deep, killing cold. At the wood stack near the barn, your father shows you how to choose pieces for immediate use. Not all logs are equal, he says, brushing snow off the pile. He taps one with his axe handle. It rings with a hollow sound. Too green, he explains. Another thuds solidly. That's the one. Seasoned, dry, will burn steady. You help load the sled with selected logs, dragging it back to the cabin with numb hands gripping the rope. Back inside, warmth greets you like a living presence. Your mother stirs the stove with precision, banking the fire to keep coals alive without wasting fuel. Careful with the damper, your father reminds her, though she hardly needs instruction. Years of practice have made her movements as instinctive as breathing. The cabin becomes a workshop of survival. Emma patches a tear in one of the quilts, her needle flashing in the firelight. Sarah kneads dough for the next day's bread, rationing flour by the handful. You sharpen tools with a whetstone, the rhythmic scraping sound, a reminder that dull blades waste strength, a luxury no one can afford. Even the younger children play their role. William and Michael gather small splinters from the floor, saving every scrap of wood for kindling. Nothing is wasted, not even the broken handle of an old spoon, which your father eyes as potential fire-starting material if needed. As the hours pass, the cabin slowly warms. Near the stove, the temperature may reach 50 degrees, an oasis of comfort in an otherwise frozen wilderness. But step a few feet away, toward the corners or windows, and the chill bites again. It is a world divided by invisible boundaries. Fire's reach versus winter's grasp. Your father leans back, resting for a rare moment, his face lit by the orange glow. Remember this, John, he says. Every day, every task, it all adds up. Firewood cut, snow melted, quilts patched. None of it feels heroic. But without it, we wouldn't last a week. His words carry no drama, only truth. Emma looks up from her sewing. Will it always be like this? She asks. Every winter, the same fight? Your father smiles faintly, though his eyes remain serious. Yes, and that's the point. Survival isn't one great battle. It's 1,000 small victories, every single day. The fire crackles softly, as though agreeing. The stove, the quilts, the wood, the very cabin itself, all are part of a system designed not for comfort, but for endurance. And as the day stretches forward, you realize this is the essence of frontier life. Not conquering the cold, but holding it at bay, hour by hour, through patience, vigilance, and work. Outside, the sky darkens once again, heavy with the promise of snow. Inside, the Morrison family prepares layer by layer, log by log, for whatever the night might bring. The cabin, though warmer now, feels fragile in the face of the vast cold pressing against its walls. Every crack, every creak is a reminder that survival here depends on constant vigilance. There is no pause, no day when the work is finished. Winter is relentless, and so must be the family. Your father rises from his stool, pulls on his heavy coat, and opens the door just wide enough to slip outside. The blast of cold air rushes in like a predator, sweeping across the floor and biting at your face. The fire hisses as the sudden draft steals some of its heat. He closes the door quickly, leaving behind a trace of white frost where his breath hung in the doorway. Animals first, he says. They don't last without us. You follow him into the barn, where the family cow stands wrapped in blankets, her breath rising in great plumes that curl in the frigid air. She shivers despite the bedding of hay piled thick around her. Your father strokes her flank with a gloved hand. "Hold on, old girl," he murmurs. We'll see you through this yet. The cow isn't just livestock. She is milk for the children, butter for bread, a steady presence through the long months. Losing her would be like losing part of the family itself. You fetch another armful of hay, tucking it along the barn's drafty edges to block the cold. Each stalk of hay is precious insulation, a shield against the night. The chickens, too, require attention. They huddle together in their wooden crate, feathers puffed, combs pale from the cold. Your father checks them one by one, his rough hands surprisingly gentle. Still alive, he mutters with satisfaction. But they'll need more heat if this spell keeps on. He sprinkles a handful of grain, watching them peck weakly. Back in the cabin, your mother has moved the water pot closer to the stove. The snow you collected earlier has melted into slush, then water, and now steams gently as she stirs. She fills a tin cup and hands it to you. Drink. The water is lukewarm but tastes of life itself. Hydration, your parents always remind you, is as important as warmth. Dehydration creeps quietly in winter, masked by the cold, and weakens even the strongest body. Emma has begun her own task, checking the quilts hung over the windows. She presses her hands along the edges, feeling for leaks. At the north-facing window, she finds a faint draft. "Here," she says. Your father joins her, mixing a quick patch of clay and ash. Together, they seal the crack with practiced motions, their hands moving like clockwork. No movement wasted, no word unnecessary. Meanwhile, your younger brothers sit on the floor near the stove, busy with what might seem like play but is, in truth, essential work. They gather small splinters of wood into piles, sorting them by size. The tiniest shavings are set aside for tomorrow morning's fire starting. Even a child's clumsy hands can contribute to survival, and they know it. By midday, the cabin is humming with quiet industry. Your mother mends a wool sock with careful stitches. Emma prepares strips of cloth to wrap around the children's boots. Your father sharpens an axe head, the rasp of metal against stone rhythmic, steady. You split a small round of oak under his supervision, learning again the patient art of striking with precision rather than brute force. "Remember," he says as the log cracks open, "firewood is more than heat, it's time. Each piece buys us hours, maybe half a day. Waste it, and you waste life itself." The lesson echoes in your mind long after the wood is stacked neatly by the stove. Outside, the sky has darkened again. The air is heavy, still too quiet. Your father pauses, listening. "Snow's coming," he says, not with alarm but with the certainty of experience. "We'll need to bank the walls again." Together, you join him outside. The snow, dry and squeaking, is pushed up against the base of the cabin, packed tight to create another barrier. You stomp it down with your boots, forcing it to hold like a frozen seal. The work stings your hands despite your mittens, and the cold gnaws at your cheeks. But you endure, knowing each shovel of snow means less heat lost through the night. Back inside, the family gathers for another meal. The cornmeal mush is thin, but your mother adds a spoonful of dried fruit to each bowl, softening the edges of hunger with sweetness. The younger children eat eagerly, unaware of the sacrifices behind such small luxuries. You eat more slowly, savoring each bite, recognizing that every mouthful is a triumph of preparation months in the making. The afternoon drags in quiet monotony. Chores blend into one another, tending fire, melting snow, checking drafts, stacking wood. Yet beneath the routine lies a constant awareness of danger. If any task is neglected, even for a day, the cabin's fragile balance could collapse. As dusk approaches, your father prepares the fire for night. He selects larger logs, arranging them carefully to burn long and slow. A bed of glowing coals forms beneath, hidden but alive. He adds a layer of ash over the top, sealing in the heat. "If we do this right," he murmurs, "we'll wake to warmth instead of frost." Your mother sets heated stones at the children's beds, wrapping them in cloth to hold the warmth until dawn. She checks each child's feet, replacing any damp socks with dry ones. Her touch is gentle but firm, her voice steady. "Dry feet, warm body," she says, the rule etched into your memory. Night falls, and the cabin settles into its rhythm of survival. The wind rises, rattling the quilts over the windows, but the fire holds. The children drift to sleep, their small bodies nestled close, breath rising in soft clouds. Emma sits by the stove, sewing by lamplight, her face calm in the flickering glow. You lie awake a while longer, listening to the sounds of the cabin, the crackle of the fire, the sigh of the wind, the quiet murmur of your parents speaking softly near the door. Their words blur into the rhythm of the night, a steady reminder that vigilance never ceases, even in rest. Somewhere outside, the snow begins to fall, soft and relentless, burying the world in silence. But inside the cabin, warmth holds. Not comfort, not luxury, but survival. And in this place, survival is victory enough. The night deepens, and with it comes a different kind of silence. Not the peaceful hush of a calm evening, but the muffled stillness of heavy snowfall pressing down on everything. The walls groan occasionally under the weight. The roof lets out faint cracks as timbers adjust to the burden. Each sound jolts your attention, a reminder that the cabin, though strong, is still a fragile shield against the elements. You stir beneath your layers, the quilt rough against your cheek. The fire glows faintly through the stove's small iron grate, an orange heart beating in the darkness. Your father's shadow moves across the floor as he checks the damper, adjusts a log, and then settles back into his chair. His presence is like a guard against the cold, vigilant, steady, tireless. But the cold still creeps. You can feel it against the walls, sliding down the floorboards, pooling in the corners. It lurks like water, finding every weakness. Despite the fire, frost gathers on the nails holding the window frames. Thin trails of white lace etch themselves along the logs where clay has shrunk from the wood. No fire, however carefully built, can completely stop it. The cabin is always a battlefield, warmth against cold, survival against the endless hunger of winter. Emma shifts in her sleep, pulling little Catherine closer. The baby stirs, sighs, and nestles deeper, her tiny breath forming a puff of steam that fades into the dim air. Your mother adjusts a quilt around them, her movements precise, as if she has rehearsed this moment countless times, which she has. Each winter is a rehearsal, each winter a test, each winter an unforgiving teacher. Your father rises again, his boots soft on the plank floor. He checks the bucket of snow by the stove. Half melted now, the water is precious. He pours it into a pot, then adds another scoop of fresh snow, always replenishing, always staying ahead. If water runs out in the night, the family wakes to thirst, and thirst in winter is as dangerous as cold. He glances at you and notices you're awake. "Keep your ears sharp, John," he says softly, his breath visible even indoors. "Listen for changes in the fire. A low hiss means wet wood. A high crackle means it's burning too fast. We can't afford to lose balance tonight." You nod, absorbing the lesson even through your weariness. The fire isn't just warmth, it's a living system that must be read like a language. Its sounds tell stories of moisture, oxygen, fuel, and danger. Sometime in the deepest part of the night, you wake again. A strange noise has pulled you from sleep, not the wind, not the creak of wood. It's a faint scratching. For a moment, your heart races, until you realize it's Buck, the family dog, rising from his place near the children. He shakes, sending a spray of ice crystals from his fur, then pads to the door and whines softly. Your father is already moving. He opens the door, a crack, and Buck slips outside into the storm. The door shuts quickly, but not before another slash of freezing air slices into the cabin. The dog disappears into the white darkness, his shape swallowed instantly. "He'll find his way back," your father assures in a low voice. "Knows this land better than any of us." Still, unease lingers as you pull the quilt tighter. The storm has grown stronger. The wind claws at the walls, looking for a way in. Each blast feels like a challenge, daring the cabin to hold. And yet, through it all, the fire continues. Small, steady, unyielding. By dawn, the world outside has changed. The snow lies deep against the walls, nearly to the windowsills. The door barely opens without shoving. When your father forces it outward, a cascade of white pours in, fine and powdery, glittering in the first faint light of morning. The cold hits harder than ever, sharp and merciless, but the family is alive. The fire still burns, the roof still holds. Breakfast is meagre cornmeal mush, darker than usual, stretched with bits of dried apple. Yet it feels like a feast, the steam rising from the pot filling the room with comfort that no quilt could provide. Your siblings eat eagerly, cheeks flushed, eyes brighter than the night before. The storm has buried everything, but inside the cabin, life continues. Chores wait, repairs must be made, wood must be split, survival never pauses. The cold may creep, the snow may fall, but the family, like the fire, endures. The morning light barely filters through the frost-crusted window coverings. What little brightness enters is pale and bluish, like light passing through ice. It does little to warm the room, but it does signal one thing clearly: the storm has passed. Your father stands by the door, surveying the world beyond with narrowed eyes. The snow lies deep, sculpted into strange shapes by the night's furious winds. Drifts have risen halfway up the cabin walls. The barn is nearly hidden, its roof a white hump barely distinguishable from the ground. The well, useless now, frozen solid, has vanished completely under a smooth mound of snow. He exhales, breath turning into a white plume. "We've work to do today," he says, voice steady, unhurried but firm. The words settle over the family like the snow outside, heavy, inescapable. You dress in layers with practiced care: wool undergarments, flannel shirt, heavy trousers, vest, and finally the canvas coat lined with rabbit fur, 2 pairs of socks, boots laced tight, mittens pulled over wool liners, a scarf wrapped across your nose and mouth until only your eyes are exposed. Each piece of clothing is not just habit, but a layer of defense, a shield between life and the cold waiting outside. The door groans as your father pushes it open, snow resisting the movement as though the storm itself does not want to release its grip. A rush of air floods in so sharp it makes your teeth ache instantly. You step out, and the world greets you with silence. No birds, no rustle of branches, only the muffled stillness of snow that has buried every sound. The landscape looks alien. Fence posts are gone, swallowed whole. The woodpile beside the barn has vanished under drifts taller than you. Only the tops of the trees break the horizon, their branches bent under impossible weight. Your breath freezes around your scarf as you lift a shovel. The work begins not with firewood, not with the animals, but with survival's first step clearing a path. Without a way to move between cabin, barn, and shed, nothing else can be done. The shovel bites into the snow, squeaking with the dry, crystalline sound unique to deep cold. Each scoop is light, but the repetition grinds against your shoulders and back. Your father works beside you, his movements efficient, economical, always deliberate. He wastes nothing, not motion, not strength. Inside the cabin, your mother tends to the fire while Emma bundles the younger children into layers of wool and fur. Their job is to stay warm, conserve energy, and avoid adding to the burdens of the day. Even so, William insists on pulling on his tiny boots. "I can help," he protests, his 6-year-old pride unwilling to be left behind. Your mother hushes him gently, but the determination in his eyes mirrors that of your father. Frontier winters leave no room for idleness, even in children. By mid-morning, a narrow passage connects the cabin to the barn. You step inside the crude structure, the smell of hay and livestock instantly filling your nose. The cow lifts her head weakly, breath steaming in the frigid air. She survived the night wrapped in blankets and surrounded by hay, but her shivering body tells the truth she will not last through another storm without more protection. Your father strokes her neck, muttering quietly. Then he turns to you. We'll move her into the cabin tonight if the cold holds. She won't make it otherwise. The thought of sharing the single-room cabin with a full-grown cow would seem absurd in another life. But here it is, simple math. Her survival means milk, butter, and calves in spring. Without her, the family's chances shrink dramatically. The chickens, huddled in their crate, are silent and subdued. Several ice-encrusted feathers litter the floor. Your father gathers the crate, hefting it with one arm, and carries it back to the cabin. They'll stay inside until the weather eases, he announces. Your mother wrinkles her nose at the thought of feathers and droppings near the stove, but she does not argue. Warmth matters more than cleanliness now. Back outside, the work turns to the woodpile. What had been a carefully stacked supply is now entombed beneath several feet of snow. The shoveling is endless, each scoop uncovering only more white. Your father directs you to dig strategically, uncovering not the entire pile but just enough to access the driest, most seasoned logs beneath the outer layers. We can't afford to waste strength, he explains. Every calorie we burn must return in heat. The sun rises higher, casting long, cold shadows across the drifts. Despite the brightness, the temperature remains punishing. You feel it in your fingers, even through the mittens. You feel it in your lungs with every breath. The cold is not passive, it presses, tests, and probes for weaknesses in your defenses. At last, you return to the cabin with arms full of wood. The door closes quickly behind you, shutting out the icy assault. Inside, the air feels almost tropical by comparison, though the thermometer near the stove reads barely 50 degrees. Your siblings cluster near the fire, cheeks flushed from warmth rather than cold for once. The chicken's crate sits in the corner, their quiet clucking adding a strange but comforting note to the small room. Your mother stirs a pot on the stove cornmeal again, thick and plain, but filling. She sprinkles in a pinch of dried herbs, a rare luxury, and the smell transforms the humble mush into something that feels almost festive. The children brighten at the scent, and for a moment, the cabin feels less like a survival outpost and more like a home. After the meal, your father spreads the day's tasks like cards on a table. The roof must be cleared of heavy snow before it collapses. The north wall needs more banking. More firewood must be split, even in this bitter cold. We stay ahead, or we fall behind, he says simply. There's no in-between. You and Emma are assigned to the snowbanks, packing fresh snow tight against the cabin's walls. It is back-breaking work, but it seals the warmth inside. Each shovelful becomes another layer of armor between your family and the cold waiting to devour you. As the day fades, the temperature begins its nightly plunge. Your father studies the sky with its shifting colors of pink, purple, and steel gray. Another hard night coming, he murmurs. We'll bring the cow in before dark. And so, as the last light slips away, you find yourself helping to guide the bewildered animal through the narrow cabin door. The space shrinks, the smell grows pungent, but the cabin's warmth deepens with the new addition. The cow settles uneasily in the corner near the woodpile, steaming breath rising like a ghost in the lamplight. Your family prepares for another night of vigilance, firewood stacked, stones heating near the stove, quilts layered thick, everyone in place, every role rehearsed. The cold outside waits, endless and merciless, but inside the cabin crowded, smoky, pungent, yet alive, the Morrissey family holds the line once more. And as you drift towards sleep, listening to the crackle of the fire and the slow chewing of the cow in the corner, you realize that survival is not a single act but 1,000 small ones repeated day after day, night after night. The war against the cold is never won, only fought, One fire, one quilt, one careful decision at a time. Night descends faster than you expect. The sky, which only an hour ago glowed pale lavender, darkens into a heavy indigo. Stars sharpen to icy pinpricks, each one flickering in the bitterly cold sky, as if even light struggles to move through the frozen air. Inside, the stove glows red-orange, its iron skin alive with heat. The cabin hums with subdued activity, your mother sewing by lamplight, Emma darning socks, the younger children nodding off on quilts spread near the stove. Even the cow, now settled in her corner, exhales long, steady breaths that fog the lamplight. Her quiet chewing adds to the odd orchestra of winter survival. The pop of wood in the stove, the hiss of boiling water, the sigh of wind against the walls. Your father squats before the stove, staring into the firebox with the focus of a man handling more than flames, handling life itself. He shifts a log slightly with the iron poker, then leans back, satisfied. "She'll hold," he mutters, meaning the fire, though it sounds as if he could mean the whole cabin. The night fire is different from the daytime blaze. Daytime flames are quick, bright, responsive. They give heat for cooking, for drying clothes, for thawing snow. But the night fire must be something else, steady, deep, designed to smoulder and carry its coals across the long hours when no one can watch it constantly. The skill lies not in feeding the fire endlessly, but in giving it just enough to live until dawn. Your father explains the ritual again, though you've heard it many times. "We bank the fire," he says, layering thick oak logs in a careful pattern. He arranges them so the flames touch only parts of each log, while the rest catch slowly, hour by hour. Ash on top slows the burn, keeps the heat steady. By morning, there'll still be coals waiting. The words sound simple, but the reality is hard-won knowledge, sharpened by years of trial and error. A fire too thin dies before dawn. Too thick, and it roars up wastefully, exhausting wood supplies. The perfect balance is a quiet pact between human and flame. He sprinkles a layer of ash over the glowing bed of coals, dimming their brightness but locking in their heat. Then he places a final oak log, broad and heavy, with deliberate precision. The stove door closes, the latch clicks, and the night's hope is sealed inside. "John," your father says softly, turning toward you, "tomorrow you'll tend the morning fire alone. It's time." His eyes meet yours in the dim light, calm but serious. This is more than a chore, it's an inheritance. Every son on the frontier must learn it, because one day the difference between a flickering ember and a cold stove may decide an entire family's fate. You nod, though your stomach twists with nerves. You know the motions, arranging kindling, blowing coals to life, stacking logs in sequence, but knowing and doing are not the same. The fire listens to no excuses. Your mother interrupts the heavy silence with a practical task. "Emma, fetch the heated stones." From beside the stove, Emma carefully lifts fist-sized rocks wrapped in rags. Their heat radiates through the cloth, almost too hot to touch. She places them in the beds, one by one, at the children's feet. Little Catherine stirs, mumbling softly, then relaxes as the warmth spreads beneath the quilts. The cow shifts in her corner, her bulk radiating warmth of its own. Odd as it feels to have her inside, no one complains. Her presence means survival, not just for milk and butter, but for the simple fact that every living body adds to the shared warmth of the cabin. The wind rises outside, rattling at the roof, probing at the chinking in the walls, searching for a way in. Each gust makes the logs creak. The quilts over the windows billow slightly, the doorframe groan. But the cabin holds. For now, it holds. Your father takes the first watch, as always. He sits by the stove with an axe across his knees, not to split wood, but as if the act of holding steel makes him steadier. The lamplight casts long shadows across his face, sharpening the lines carved by winters past. He listens more than he speaks, ears tuned to every creak of timber, every hiss of the fire, every moan of the storm outside. You lie down near your brothers, quilts pulled to your chin, body pressed against theirs for warmth. Sleep comes slowly. Your mind lingers on the fire, on the glowing coals hidden under ash, on the heavy oak log giving itself hour by hour. Will it last? Will there be enough heat when dawn comes? At some point in the night, you wake. The cabin is dark except for the faint glow from the stove and the steady sound of wind. Your father is still at his post, eyes half closed but alert, like a soldier on night duty. He notices you stirring. "Go back to sleep," he whispers. The fire's steady. You close your eyes again, reassured by his quiet certainty. But before sleep claims you, you understand something clearly. Winter is not a battle fought once. It is 1,000 small battles, night after night, fire after fire. And every victory is temporary, bought only until the next dawn. Morning does not arrive with sunlight. It arrives with cold. A heavy, suffocating cold that pushes against your chest even before your eyes open. The darkness is thick, unbroken except for the faintest orange glow seeping through the iron grate of the stove. You lie still for a moment, waiting, listening. The cabin is silent. No shifting from your siblings, no quiet hum of your mother preparing breakfast, no deep clearing of your father's throat. Everyone is still asleep, buried beneath quilts layered thick. The only sound is the faint whistle of wind slipping through some unseen crack in the chinking, a sound as old as winter itself. Then you remember, today is your turn. The first morning when the survival of the family fire belongs to you. You push back the quilt, and the cold hits instantly. It is a blow, sharp as any strike. Your nose burns. Your breath curls in the air like smoke. Your fingers, clumsy even inside mittens, grope for the pile of clothes you left beside the bed. Wool shirt, patched trousers, a second pair of socks. The garments are stiff with frost at the edges, but still warmer than bare skin. Your father shifts slightly in his chair, one eye opening, then closing again. He does not speak. He doesn't need to. This is your test, and his silence is permission. The cabin feels cavernous as you cross the floor. Each step echoes faintly, wood groaning beneath your weight. The stove looms ahead like a dark altar, its faint glow a promise that the night's fire still lives, if you can keep it alive. You kneel, your breath frosting the iron door as you unlatch it. Inside, the fire is almost gone. Only a scattering of embers glows beneath a crust of grey ash. You lean close, holding your breath, afraid to disturb the delicate balance with even the wrong sigh. This is the moment your father spoke of so many times. The line between fire and failure, between warmth and the cold that kills. You begin with kindling. Thin splinters of pine your family split weeks ago, dry as bone. You place them carefully on the coals, arranging them like a tiny house, angled to catch, but not smother. You strike a match, then hesitate. Your father's voice echoes in your head. Save the match, use the coals. Matches are precious, each one a small miracle that cannot be wasted. So you lean down, lips pursed, and blow. Not a hard gust, but a steady breath, just as you've seen him do. The ash stirs, the embers glow brighter, faint orange pulsing like the heartbeat of something awakening. You blow again, long and steady. This time, a wisp of smoke curls upward, thin but alive. The kindling darkens, then catches. First a thin line of flame, then a lick, then a growing flicker that crawls up the splinters. You add another piece, then another, careful, deliberate. The fire responds, climbing higher, stronger. Your chest loosens, relief, like warmth itself, spreads through you. Behind you, you hear the quilt rustle. Emma's voice, groggy but alert. Is it catching? It is, you whisper back. And for the first time, you feel the words carry weight, not as a report to an elder, but as a keeper of the fire yourself. You add slightly larger sticks now, placing them in a crisscross pattern for airflow. The flames curl around them, crackling softly, eating at their edges. Then comes the oak, heavy and patient, chosen last night for this very morning. You set it on the growing bed of coals, careful not to collapse the fragile structure beneath. The stove breathes again. It is unmistakable, the sound of draft pulling smoke upward, the low hum of flame finding its rhythm. You close the door gently, adjust the damper just as you've seen your father do, and lean back on your heels. A hand rests briefly on your shoulder. Your father, awake now, watching from the shadows. He does not speak praise, but his eyes hold approval, and that is more than enough. The cabin begins to wake with the fire. Your mother rises, her breath clouding in the air as she pulls her shawl tight. Emma stirs the youngest children, coaxing them toward the warmest part of the room. Little William complains about the cold floor, his voice muffled by quilts. Baby Clara only whimpers until she is lifted and brought close to the stove's radiant heat. Your father finally speaks, his tone quiet but firm. "Good work, John. You've earned your place." The words settle into you with a gravity you hadn't expected. Earned. Not just a boy's chore, but a man's responsibility. From this morning forward, you are part of the chain of survival knowledge, as vital as any log stacked against the wall. Breakfast is prepared, cornmeal mush again, thin but hot. Your mother ladles it carefully, each portion measured, each spoonful stretched. The snow you collected yesterday has melted fully into water, refilled into the bucket, ready for cooking and drinking. Nothing wasted, nothing taken for granted. Outside, the world brightens. The first rays of sun slip across the snowbanks, painting them pink and gold. The light makes them beautiful, but you know better. Beauty does not mean safety. Beneath that glittering crust lies hunger and cold, waiting for the careless. Your father eats quickly, standing near the door, already thinking of the day's tasks. "We'll cut more hickory today," he says between mouthfuls. "We used more than I planned last night. Can't let the pile fall too low." His words aren't just about wood. They're about vigilance, about never letting survival rest. Emma sets her bowl down and ties a scarf around her head. "I'll tend the little ones. Mama can sew. I'll keep the fire steady too." Your father nods, accepting without hesitation. Trust in her skill is as complete as his trust in the stove's iron walls. After breakfast, you step outside with him, the cold stabbing at your face like needles. The snow squeaks under your boots, the unmistakable cry of deep freeze. The air is so dry it burns your lungs, each breath like inhaling glass. But the sky is clear, and for a brief moment, it feels almost possible that spring might someday return. He pauses at the edge of the clearing, surveying the forest beyond. The trees stand like frozen sentinels, branches heavy with ice. "Wood waits for us," he says simply. "But so does the cold. Never forget, John, the cold always waits." You nod, pulling your scarf tighter. The lesson is clear. Fire is life. Fire is memory. And now, the fire is your responsibility too. The morning fire is steady now, a bed of glowing coals beneath the new oak logs, and the cabin holds its fragile warmth. But warmth indoors means nothing if tomorrow's wood is not secured today. Your father straps on his heavy coat, the canvas stiff with frost around the seams, and beckons you toward the door. "Bring the saw," he says. "We'll need the long blade. The hickory waits." You nod, slipping into your outer layers. Wool cap pulled low, scarf wound twice across your mouth and nose, mittens tugged tight over still tender fingers. Outside, the world is dazzling. The sun rides low in the sky, its weak rays scattering diamonds across the snow. Each step crunches sharply, snow squeaking with that high-pitched cry that only comes when the cold has sunk deep into the marrow of the land. The sled waits by the barn, runners already frosted with last night's ice. You help harness yourself into the leather straps alongside your father, pulling the empty weight across the clearing toward the line of trees beyond. The forest stands dark and silent, branches heavy with snow, trunks rigid as iron. When you enter the tree line, the wind drops away, replaced by a muffled stillness. The snow here is deeper, undisturbed since the last storm. You lift your legs high, each step laborious, but the motion warms your blood. Ahead, your father stops, scanning the trunks with a practiced eye. "There," he says, pointing to a tall hickory with pale, ridged bark. "Dead 2 winters, still sound. Perfect." You set the saw in place. The steel teeth bite into the frozen wood with a rasping groan. Your father takes the opposite handle, and the rhythm begins. Push, pull, push, pull. The blade sings through the trunk, each stroke shaving curls of pale wood that fall to the snow. It is brutal work. Your arms ache, breath steaming through your scarf, but the rhythm steadies you. The tree creaks. Your father's voice sharpens. Careful now, listen to her. The creak becomes a crack, deep and resonant, like the voice of the earth itself. With one final push, the trunk gives way, toppling through the forest with a crash that sends a shudder through the ground. Snow cascades from branches in glittering sheets. For a moment, the forest echoes with the sound. Then silence returns, deeper than before. You step back, heart pounding. Even after countless fellings, the sight of a tree surrendering to gravity holds a kind of awe. Your father rests a hand on the rough bark. "Never take it for granted," he murmurs. "A tree is a season's warmth. Treat it with respect. The work is only beginning. The trunk must be bucked into stove lengths, each cut measured to fit the iron box back home. You and your father take turns with the saw, arms burning, lungs heaving. The sound is steady now, almost hypnotic, until another round falls with a heavy thud into the snow. Then comes splitting. Your father sets the wedge along a natural crack, strikes it hard with the back of the axe. The wood resists at first, fibers clinging to one another, until with a sharp report it yields, splitting clean in 2. He nods toward you. Your turn. You heft the axe, fingers stiff on the worn handle. The wedge is already in place. You raise the axe high, swing down with all your strength. The steel rings against iron, driving the wedge deeper. A line spreads through the wood, slow and deliberate. Another strike. Another. The round gives way, splitting apart with a satisfying snap. "Good," your father says. His praise is spare, but it warms more than the fire back home. For hours you work, sawing, splitting, stacking. The sled fills slowly with the pale halves of hickory rounds, each one heavy, dense with the energy of summer sunlight stored in its grain. The sun creeps higher, then dips, shadows lengthening. Time on the frontier is measured not by clocks but by the depth of shadow and the feel of hunger in the belly. At last your father straightens, wiping sweat frozen into frost on his brow. "Enough for today," he says. "Storm's not far off. Best to be home with what we've got." You lash the load tight with rope, the sled groaning under its weight. The trip back is harder, each step dragging against the burden, but there is satisfaction in the struggle. Behind you, the sled carves twin tracks through the snow, a line of effort and survival. When the cabin comes into view, smoke rises from its chimney, a thin grey line against the winter sky. The sight fills you with relief. Home, heat, safety. Inside, the fire burns steadily, tended by Emma and your mother. The smell of boiling cornmeal fills the room. The little ones cluster near the stove, cheeks flushed with warmth. Your mother looks up as you and your father enter, snow clinging to your coats. "Good haul?" she asks. "Enough," your father answers simply. He unloads the sled, stacking the hickory by the indoor pile, each piece inspected for snow before joining the rest. You add your own armloads, pride swelling with every thud of wood placed safely inside. That evening, as the fire consumes the first of today's harvest, your father leans back, eyes half closed. "Remember, John," he says softly, "every log is a day of life. That's the measure of winter. Not weeks, not months, logs." The words settle over you as the flames crackle, casting golden light across the rough-hewn walls. Outside, the cold waits, patient and merciless. But inside, with hickory stacked high and fire steady, your family holds another day's victory. By the time supper ends, the sky outside has shifted. What began as a pale winter sunset has become a flat sheet of grey, the kind that presses low against the horizon. Your father steps out briefly after the meal, lantern in hand, and when he returns, his expression tells you more than words. "Storm's on its way," he says simply, hanging the lantern on its peg. The words ripple through the family like a chill. No one panics. Storms are as familiar as frost, but each person knows what they mean. More work, more vigilance, less sleep. Even the younger children fall quiet, watching as your father draws his chair close to the fire. He gestures for you to sit with him. "Learn to read the signs, John. The wind carries warnings if you listen." You lean forward, watching his weathered face illuminated by firelight. He speaks slowly, as though reciting truths carved into stone. When the air feels heavy, though the cold is sharp, that means snow. When the clouds lie flat and grey, without shape, that's no common flurry, that's a blow. You nod, absorbing the lesson. In a world without forecasts, thermometers that often break, or maps filled with swirling pressure systems, survival depends on observation. Your mother rises from her chair, already moving with quiet purpose. "We'll need to double-check the stores," she says. "Storm food only things that can be stretched." Emma stands to help, gathering baskets of dried beans and jars of pickled vegetables from the shelves. She runs her fingers over each lid, testing the seal with practiced care. One loose seal could mean spoilage. Spoilage in winter means hunger. Meanwhile, your father pulls on his coat again. "Snowbank needs patching," he mutters, already reaching for his gloves. You're at his side before he asks. The two of you step outside into the deepening twilight. The cold hits like a blow to the chest, sharp and unyielding, but you've learned not to flinch. Instead, you follow your father to the north wall of the cabin. The snowbank there, once tightly packed, has sagged in spots, leaving gaps where wind can creep through. Your father hands you the shovel, its handle worn smooth by countless winters. "Pack it tight," he instructs. "Loose snow won't hold." Together you work, scooping and pressing, building a solid barrier that hugs the logs like armor. Each shovel of snow squeaks under the pressure, compacting into dense layers. The wall grows, inch by inch, until it nearly reaches the windowsill. By the time you finish, your breath hangs in thick clouds and frost clings to your scarf. Your father nods approvingly. "Good, that'll buy us warmth." Back inside, the cabin glows golden with lamplight. The table is cleared, bowls stacked neatly, and the younger children are already dressed in extra layers. Your mother moves with calm efficiency, her hands never idle. She places heated stones into cloth bundles, sliding them beneath the quilts where the little ones will sleep. "Better to be ready before the blow hits," she murmurs, more to herself than anyone else. You sit near the stove, flexing your stiff fingers. The fire crackles steadily, but even here, so close to the iron, you feel the draft testing the walls. The storm has not yet arrived, but it already presses its weight against the cabin. Emma settles beside you, her hands busy knitting by firelight. Each loop of yarn adds to the mitten she works on one more layer of protection against the cold. "Papa says storms don't last forever," she whispers, "but they always feel endless while they're here." You glance toward your father, who now sharpens an axe blade with slow, steady strokes. The sound of steel on stone is almost soothing. He pauses only to check the edge with his thumb before returning to the rhythm. "An axe must be ready," he says quietly without looking up. Sometimes storms bring more than snow. Fallen trees, broken fences, work waits for no man. The hours stretch into evening. The cabin grows warmer near the stove, cooler near the walls, the difference so sharp it feels like stepping from one world to another. The younger children drift into sleep, bundled in quilts, their breaths rising in little clouds before fading into the dark. Outside, the wind begins to whisper. At first, it is faint, like a hand brushing against the logs. Then, slowly, it gathers strength, rising into a mournful hum that seeps through every seam. The cabin answers with its own chorus, timbers creaking, shingles rattling, the stovepipe moaning softly. "Here it comes," your father says, rising to check the damper one last time. The storm arrives not with sudden fury, but with steady insistence. Snow lashes against the windows, finding its way through the smallest cracks, drifting onto the sill in fine white threads. The wind presses hard, as if testing the family's defenses. Your mother tightens the quilts over the children. Emma sets aside her knitting. You help your father adjust the fire, careful not to feed it too quickly. The balance is delicate, too much wood now, and it won't last till morning. Too little, and the fire may falter when it's needed most. Hours pass in the rhythm of survival. Add a log, check a window, adjust the quilts, listen to the storm. The wind howls outside, a relentless voice that seems to say, "I will find your weakness." Yet inside, the cabin holds. Warmth flickers, bodies breathe, life persists. At last, your father settles into his chair again, eyes half closed. His voice is low, almost a murmur. "Remember, John, storms always test us, but every one we endure makes the cabin stronger, and us too." You nod, even as sleep pulls at your eyes. The storm rages on, but within these rough-hewn walls you feel something stronger than fear. Resilience, carved by the cold, shaped by knowledge, and bound together by family. Morning arrives without sunlight. The world outside remains locked in grey, the storm pressing on as though the night never ended. When your father cracks the door open to peer out, snow spills inward, fine and powdery, carried on a sharp wind that cuts like a knife. He shuts it quickly, shaking his head. "Still blowing. We're not going anywhere today." The statement settles over the family like a heavy quilt. No one protests, no one expected otherwise, but the truth of it being trapped indoors, surrounded by walls of snow, carries its own weight. Inside, the cabin feels smaller than ever. Every corner holds a task, every space is occupied. The fire roars steadily, but already your father calculates the wood supply, glancing at the stack with eyes that see beyond numbers into days of survival. 8 days inside, he mutters, mostly to himself. Maybe less if it doesn't let up. Your mother moves with brisk determination. "Then we'll stretch everything." Small meals, plenty of hot liquid. She ladles water into the cornmeal pot, thinning it to make the supply last. The smell is familiar, comforting, yet beneath it lies the sharp tang of worry. Emma takes charge of the younger children. She sits them near the stove, handing out slates and chalk for practice lessons. Letters, numbers, even little drawings, all distractions to keep small minds from dwelling on the storm. Little Catherine scribbles circles with fierce concentration, her breath puffing white above the slate. You and your father turn to maintenance. First, the windows. The quilts sag slightly where wind has tested their fastenings. You push the cloth back into place, pressing rags tighter into gaps. Each movement feels like sealing a ship against leaks. Heat, like water, wants to escape through every crack. "Check the north wall," your father instructs. Together you inspect the seams, running your hands along the logs. Cold leaks in faintly, invisible but undeniable. You mix another small batch of clay and ash, pressing it into a gap. The smell of damp earth fills the room, oddly grounding. The storm howls louder, rattling the roof. For a moment, everyone pauses, listening as though waiting for collapse. But the timbers hold. They were felled straight and notched true, your father's craftsmanship standing against the storm's fury. By midday, the monotony sets in. The children fidget. William complains of aching legs. Even Emma sighs as she sets her knitting aside. Your mother catches your eye. Games, she says simply. And so you begin a round of riddles, old ones passed down through winters before. What has no voice but speaks to all, your father asks, a rare glint of humour in his eyes. The answer, of course, is the wind. The children giggle despite the storm's howl just outside the walls. Afterwards, your mother unwraps a small jar of molasses, just a spoonful each, dark and sticky, shared in turn. It's not much, but the taste lingers sweet on the tongue, a reminder that survival does not mean the absence of joy. As evening nears, your father teaches you another lesson. He kneels by the fire, showing you how to bank coals for the night. See, John? You bury them under ash, slow their breath. In the morning, a single stir, and they wake again. Waste them, and you'll spend precious time and wood starting fresh. His hands move with the certainty of ritual, each gesture precise. You mirror his actions, committing the technique to memory. Fire is more than warmth. It is continuity. It bridges night to day, storm to calm, one generation to the next. When night falls, the body heat shelter is built again, this time with even more care. The storm has deepened, temperatures plunging further. Quilts are layered, stones reheated, children gathered in the center like chicks beneath a hen's wing. Inside the small space, warmth blooms quickly. Breath mingles, heartbeats steady. The storm screams just beyond the cloth walls. But in here, there is comfort. Primitive, close, undeniably human. Emma whispers stories to the little ones, tales of foxes in the snow, of owls hunting silently above drifts. Her voice lulls them into slumber. Even you drift, half awake, half dreaming, as your father's words echo in memory. Storms always test us, but each one endured makes us stronger. And so the night passes, not in silence, but in survival. Dawn comes reluctantly, grey light filtering through the layered window coverings. For a moment, you almost believe the storm has ended. The cabin is strangely quiet, but when your father cracks the door, snow pours inward in a fine stream, carried on a muffled but insistent wind. The storm hasn't stopped. It has merely shifted, its fury dulled, its endurance frightening. Still going, he says grimly, brushing frost from his beard. Another day inside. The family accepts this with quiet resignation. Complaints are useless on the frontier, reality simply island. But beneath the silence, you can sense the weight pressing on everyone. Children stir restlessly. Emma moves with subdued energy. Even your mother's face looks drawn as she sets about thinning the morning porridge. The fire holds steady. The banked coals from last night glow faintly as your father adds carefully chosen splits of hickory. He does it slowly, deliberately, conserving wood. Each stick placed feels like a coin spent. Breakfast is modest. Porridge with a scrape of molasses. Hot water flavored with coffee grounds that have been reused 3 times. The adults pretend it is satisfying, but you can see William's disappointment as he stares into his nearly empty bowl. Better to feel a little hungry now, your mother reminds gently, than to feel a lot hungry later. Her voice carries authority, but she squeezes William's shoulder with a quiet tenderness. He nods, forcing the last spoonful into his mouth. After the meal, your father sets the day's tasks. We'll keep busy, he says firmly. Storm or not, the work doesn't stop. You help him sort tools by the doorway. Axes are checked for cracks in the wooden handles, wedges examined for chips, saw teeth filed sharp against a whetstone. The sound of steel on steel rings through the cabin, steady and reassuring. Maintenance isn't busy work, it's survival. A dull saw or a broken handle could cost lives when the next clear day demands woodcutting. Emma tends to the indoor wood stack, rearranging pieces so the driest are closest to the stove. She counts aloud, a habit your father taught her. 20 oak, 15 hickory, 7 pine. Numbers become comfort in the uncertainty, a way to measure time, not in hours, but in logs. Your mother turns to sewing. She repairs a mitten whose seam has begun to fray, her needle flashing in the firelight. Even small weaknesses, left unchecked, could become disasters when the cold outside punishes every exposed inch of skin. By midday, the monotony presses hard. The younger children grow restless, quarreling over wooden blocks, their voices sharp in the closed space. Emma intervenes with a story, her tone calm, soothing, weaving images of summer fields and buzzing bees. The boys settle, lulled by the thought of warmth and Sundays. You notice your father watching her with approval. Stories keep the cold away as much as fire, he murmurs almost to himself. You realize he is right. Words build invisible walls against despair. Later, he pulls you aside for another lesson. Watch the damper, he says, pointing to the iron plate above the firebox. It's the balance point. Too far open and we waste wood. Too far closed and we risk smoke. Listen to the fire. It tells you. You lean close. The flames roar with one setting, choke with another. When the damper sits just right, the sound changes steady, content, almost like breathing. You nod, committing it to memory. Evening approaches, and the storm shows no sign of breaking. Snow presses against the windows, muting what little light remains. Inside, the cabin grows warmer, almost too warm near the stove. Your father orders everyone to shift places, rotating so no one overheats or freezes. The body heat shelter is rebuilt with practiced efficiency. Quilts draped, bedding pulled close, stones reheated and wrapped. The children crawl inside eagerly, recognizing the comfort it offers. You follow, feeling the sudden bloom of warmth as bodies gather, heat multiplying in the small enclosed space. Outside, the storm resumes its voice. The wind moans through cracks, rattles the roof, claws at the chimney. Inside, you huddle with your family, listening to Emma's whispered tale of a fox outwitting a hunter in the snow. The story drifts into dreams as you close your eyes, cocooned in warmth while death rages just beyond the log walls. The second day ends much like the first. No victory, no failure, just survival. And on the frontier, survival itself is triumph enough. The third morning of the storm arrives without change. No sunrise, only a dull glow through frosted paper windows. The snow outside presses hard enough that the door opens only a few inches before meeting resistance. Your father forces it closed again, shaking his head. Still locked in, he says. His voice is calm, but you can see the fatigue in his eyes. Inside, the cabin feels smaller with each passing hour. 10 steps from wall to wall, 4 from bed to stove. Every creak of the timbers, every cough of a child echoes too loudly in the cramped space. Even the fire seems louder, popping and hissing as though it knows it has become the heartbeat of the family. Breakfast is thinner than before. Cornmeal stretched with melted snow, barely sweetened by the last drizzle of molasses. The children eat in silence, their small faces pale in the flickering firelight. Your mother forces a cheerful tone. Warm food in our bellies, that's what matters. We'll make it through. Emma begins a round of lessons again, but today the younger boys are restless. William fidgets, tapping his slate with chalk until it breaks. Michael bursts into sudden tears, not from hunger or cold, but from sheer confinement. Emma soothes him quickly, rocking him like a much younger child. Your father watches quietly, then rises. We'll give them something to do. He opens the tool chest, pulling out small scraps of wood. John, fetch the carving knife. Together you sit with the boys, guiding their hands as they scrape and shape the wood into crude figures, animals, wagons, anything their imaginations suggest. Soon the cabin is filled with the smell of fresh wood shavings, and the boys' spirits lift. Even little Catherine claps as William proudly shows off a lopsided horse. By midday, the air inside grows heavy, not from smoke your father manages the damper well, but from stillness. The storm's howl outside creates a constant background drone, like a great beast breathing against the walls. It wears on the nerves, eroding patience. Your mother notices it too. She calls everyone to a small task, sorting dried beans from the storage jar. It seems trivial, but the repetitive motion calms frayed tempers. Even Emma participates, humming softly as her fingers sift through the beans. The sound of clicking seeds becomes its own rhythm, steady, grounding. Later, your father teaches you how to sharpen the axe blades properly. Not too fine, he warns. Too fine an edge chips in frozen wood. Better a strong edge that holds. He demonstrates with slow, steady strokes on the whetstone, the rasping sound oddly reassuring. You mimic his motions, feeling the pull of steel on stone. The lesson serves more than one purpose. It keeps you busy, focused, and it reminds everyone that spring will come eventually, that the tools must be ready for woodcutting, fence building, and ploughing. The storm may trap you now, but life will move forward again. As dusk approaches, the cabin feels both warm and stifling. The fire's glow paints the walls orange, but outside remains endless white. The children bicker again, and Emma snaps at William more sharply than usual. Silence follows, heavier than the storm. Your mother intervenes, her voice firm but kind. Enough. This storm will pass, and when it does, we'll be glad we kept peace inside these walls. Her words carry weight. Everyone settles, chastened by the reminder that survival is more than warmth and food. It is also the harmony of spirits confined together. The body heat shelter is prepared once more. Tonight the quilts feel heavier, the air inside warmer from so many bodies pressed close, but the comfort is tinged with unease. How many more nights will be spent like this? How long before supplies run too low, before tempers fray beyond repair? As you lie awake listening to the storm claw at the cabin, your father's words echo in your mind. Storms always test us. And you realize this storm is testing more than your family's walls. It is testing your patience, your will, your very faith in endurance. The third day of confinement ends not in triumph or disaster, but in weary silence. Survival continues, but so does the storm. The fourth morning arrives with no blue sky, only a dim grey that seeps through the quilted windows. The sound of the storm has changed. Less howling now, more of a low, grinding moan as wind pushes mountains of snow against the cabin. When your father tests the door, it doesn't budge. Snow has sealed you in. He doesn't panic. He only mutters, "We'll dig out later. Fire first." But the truth is clear. You are buried alive in a wooden box, your only lifeline, the steady crackle of the stove. Breakfast is meager. The porridge has no molasses this time, just plain cornmeal and melted snow. The children stare at their bowls without speaking, then eat in silence. Even little Catherine doesn't fuss, as though she too understands the gravity of dwindling supplies. After the meal, your father pulls you aside. "Wood count," he says quietly. Together you tally the indoor stack, enough for maybe 6 more days at careful rationing. Outside, who knows if the drifts haven't buried the barn stacks too deep. "We'll make it," he assures you, but his eyes betray calculation. Every log is a number in an invisible equation, every ember a coin spent against death. The day drags on. Restlessness gnaws at everyone. Emma snaps at William again when he knocks over a pan. William bursts into tears. Even your mother, usually steady, raises her voice before catching herself and pulling him into a hug. I'm sorry, my boy. Storms make us all sharp. Your father senses the tension. He sets tasks, however small. John, help me check the chinking near the stovepipe. Emma, show your brothers how to mend their socks. Work is medicine. It replaces fear with focus. You and your father examine the log joints by candlelight. Some of the clay and hair mixture has cracked. He shows you how to patch it with spare scraps and a smear of warm clay from the pot near the stove. Every draft plugged is wood saved, he explains. Every degree of heat we hold means one less log burned. By mid-afternoon, the air inside is stifling with tension, though still freezing near the walls. To break the mood, your father begins telling a story. Not a fairy tale, but a memory from his youth, his first Montana winter, when an older trapper taught him to bank snow against his cabin walls. I thought he was mad, your father says, his eyes distant with memory. Pile snow against the house? But it worked. That old man saved me from freezing. His voice softens. Knowledge passed down, that's how we survive. The children lean in, wide-eyed. Even Emma relaxes, listening intently. For a few minutes, the storm outside fades into background noise. The family's minds are warmed by memory as much as the stove warms their bodies. Evening comes. Supper is little more than broth stretched thin with root vegetables and a scrap of salt pork. The flavor is faint, but the warmth lifts spirits slightly. Afterward, your father digs out 4 stones from beside the stove, reheating them carefully. He wraps each in cloth and places them at the foot of the beds. Not much, but it'll help, he murmurs. The body heat shelter is rebuilt yet again. Everyone crawls inside, bodies pressed close, quilts sealed tight. The children fall asleep quickly, exhausted by the long confinement. You lie awake longer, listening to the cabin itself groan under the weight of snow. Every creak sounds like a warning. Your father takes the first fire watch. At one point you hear him break apart another piece of furniture, a stool this time, and feed it to the fire. The smell of burning varnish seeps into the quilts, acrid and sharp, but no one complains. Better the stool lost than the fire gone. The night passes in uneasy fits of sleep, punctuated by the sound of shifting snow outside and the constant hiss of the fire inside. By dawn, the storm's voice is quieter, not gone, but weaker. When your father opens the door this time, light filters in through a small gap at the top. It's breaking, he announces, his voice carrying both relief and caution. But we'll dig out slow. Storms like to fool you. Sometimes they come back angry. The family breathes easier, though supplies are thinner, tempers shorter, and fatigue heavier. You've endured 4 days sealed in by winter's grip, kept alive by fire, quilts, and discipline. And though the storm's fury is waning, its lesson remains clear. Survival is never comfort. It is vigilance, patience, and the will to endure until the wind itself grows tired. The morning begins with silence, an unfamiliar hush after days of howling wind. It takes a moment for you to recognize it. The storm has finally eased. When your father cracks the door, a shaft of pale sunlight pierces the dim cabin, scattering motes of frost into golden sparks. Time to dig, he says simply. Relief flickers across every face, tempered by the knowledge of the work ahead. Breakfast is thin again, but spirits are brighter. Even little Michael claps his hands when he hears that the storm has passed. Your mother warns, don't cheer too soon, cold's still dangerous. But her voice carries less strain than yesterday. Bundled in every layer available, you and your father push against the door. It opens only halfway before hitting a wall of snow. The drift rises higher than your shoulders, packed dense as stone. Your father tests it with the shovel. Heavy, he mutters. We'll carve a tunnel first. The work is slow, exhausting. Each scoop feels like lifting stone dust. The air is so cold it burns your lungs, yet sweat runs down your back beneath the layers. Steady, your father reminds you. Don't sweat too much. Wet clothes kill faster than cold air. He pauses often, breathing through the scarf, eyes scanning you for signs of frostbite. Inside, the family keeps the fire alive, while Emma leads the younger children in tidying the cabin. Your mother melts snow in a great iron pot, replenishing water stores drained during the storm. Every small task matters. The cabin must return from siege mode to daily life. By midday, a narrow trench stretches from the door out into the yard. The light dazzles you after so long in dimness. The world has transformed snow sculpted into ridges taller than the cabin roof, trees bent under crystalline burdens, the sky a clear, hard blue. Beauty and danger bound together. The barn is half buried, its roof peeking from a white drift. Together, you and your father dig toward it, carving a path wide enough for one person. Inside, the cow moans softly, shivering but alive. Chickens stir in their crate, subdued but moving. Relief washes over your father's face. They made it. Fresh bedding is added, hay piled high. You fetch an armload of wood from the barn stack, each piece a victory reclaimed from the snow. Some are damp, but many remain dry thanks to careful covering before the storm. Your father nods with satisfaction. Enough for weeks, if we're careful. The work continues into afternoon. Snowbanks are packed against the cabin walls once more, thickening the natural insulation. Roof edges are cleared to prevent ice dams. The outhouse path is reopened with groaning effort. By the time dusk settles, the homestead breathes again. Smoke curls confidently from the chimney. Paths crisscross the yard. Animals stir in their shelters. Inside, supper of beans and dried apple tastes like a feast. The children chatter with new energy, their cabin fever broken by the glimpse of sky. As you sit by the stove, hands raw from the shovel, you realize the storm has given more than it took. It tested the cabin, the systems, the family, and they held. Your father, rubbing his cracked hands with grease, speaks softly. Storms show you what you're made of, and what your home's made of. We're stronger for it. The family nods, weary but proud. Outside, the snow glitters under moonlight, silent at last. The storm is over, but winter is far from done. The morning after the dig-out dawns, pale and bitter. The storm has passed, but the cold lingers, sharp and glassy. Frost creeps along the inside of the cabin's log seams like lacework etched by an unseen hand. Your father checks the thermometer nailed to the north wall. 25 below, he announces. His voice is calm, not fearful. Compared to the storm's -40, this feels almost merciful. Breakfast is plain cornmeal mush, thinned with melted snow, but laughter slips back into the cabin, tentative but real. The younger boys squabble over who gets the first warmed stone for their feet. Even Catherine claps when Emma sets the bowl of steaming mush on the table. As bowls are scraped clean, your father clears his throat. We'll need to be ready for the Henderson gathering tomorrow. That means preparation today. Supplies, gifts, food to share. Your mother nods. She has already been thinking ahead. From a storage chest, she withdraws a small jar of molasses, a treasure saved for just such occasions. I'll make a sweetened bread, she says firmly. It will stretch our flour, and we'll have something worthy to bring. She glances at Emma. And you'll finish those mittens. The lining trick needs to be shown. Emma beams at the responsibility. She pulls out the half-finished pair from her work basket, the soft wool already stitched with neat care. She threads her needle by the stove light and begins. Your father's tasks are different. He inspects the sled runners, scraping away ice build-up and rubbing them with animal fat for smooth travel. He sharpens the axe. Always carry one, he reminds you. Storms can fell trees across trails, and packs the emergency kit once more, each piece checked with ritual precision. Flint and steel? Present. Char cloth? Dry. Rope? Coiled, neat. Canvas tarp? Folded and tied. Meanwhile, you and William help your mother sort the pantry. Every contribution matters at a gathering, but nothing can be squandered. A jar of pickled beans is set aside, along with a parcel of dried venison. Not much, your mother murmurs, but when each family brings something, it becomes plenty. In the corner, little Michael and Catherine work on their own contribution. With guidance from Emma, they wrap pine cones in scraps of coloured cloth tied with string. Toys for the Henderson children, Emma explains, her voice patient despite their fumbling fingers. Gifts don't need to be grand, they just need to carry heart. The day hums with quiet purpose. Outside, the paths carved after the storm are widened. You fetch more wood to ensure the indoor stack is full before travel. The cow is brushed, her flanks rubbed with straw to restore circulation. Chickens are fed and watered, their clucks a sign that life returns to normal rhythm. At midday, your father calls you to his side. We'll check the route today, see how the drifts lie. 5 miles isn't far, but in this cold, with children, it's a trial. Better to know now than to guess tomorrow. Together you tramp out a short distance, following the trail eastward. Snowdrifts lie deep in places, but the crust holds enough to walk with effort. He marks landmarks in his mind, the ridge where wind has swept the ground bare, the stand of firs that offers shelter. Each observation is stored like a note in an unwritten map. By the time you return, your cheeks burn with wind, but the knowledge comforts you. The path is passable. Evening finds the family gathered in a circle of lamplight. The bread has baked to a rich golden crust, filling the cabin with a smell so sweet the children beg for slices. Your mother shakes her head firmly. Tomorrow, at Henderson's, that's what makes it special. She cuts only thin slivers for tasting, enough to spark anticipation. Emma holds up the finished mittens, lined with scraps of rabbit fur stitched so skillfully they look as if made by a professional seamstress. Perfect, your mother praises. You'll show the other girls how. That's knowledge worth more than gold. Your father spreads the map on the table, tracing the route with a blunt finger. We leave at dawn, 2 sleds, all emergency packs, food for the journey, and space for the McClintocks. If the sky holds clear, we'll reach Henderson's by noon. His eyes move over each child. Remember the rules. Stay close. No wandering. No shortcuts. We move as one. The fire hisses softly, throwing sparks against the stove walls. Outside, the night deepens, stars blazing in the frozen sky. Inside, the family readies not just for travel, but for community, for the rare chance to see neighbors, exchange knowledge, and feel less alone in the vast Montana winter. As you settle into bed, the warmth of heated stones at your feet, you feel a curious mix of excitement and caution. Tomorrow will bring voices other than your family's, laughter of children beyond your siblings, stories of survival shared by many. But first, there will be 5 miles of biting cold to endure. Your father's voice drifts through the dimness as he banks the fire. Sleep well, all of you. Tomorrow we walk together, not just for ourselves, but for the strength of the whole valley. And with that, the cabin sinks into silence, resting for the journey that awaits at first light. Dawn comes reluctantly, the sky a pale grey wash behind veils of drifting frost. Inside the cabin, everyone stirs before the first light fully reaches the valley. It is not excitement alone that wakes them, it is discipline. Travel in deep winter begins early, when daylight is precious and every hour counts. Your father stands by the stove, checking the coals. The fire has held through the night, thanks to careful banking. Good, he murmurs. Hot food before we leave. Your mother is already moving, ladling mush into bowls and sweetening each with a scant drizzle of molasses. Even such a small indulgence feels like a feast before the long road. The McClintocks arrive just after sunrise, their figures trudging from the east through pale mist. Henry pulls the sled with Alice and Peter bundled inside, while Martha follows behind, shawl pulled tightly around her shoulders. Relief floods your father's face when he sees them. They made it, he says quietly, then louder. Come warm yourselves. Inside, steam from the mush curls in the air as outer layers are stripped and hung near the stove. The McClintock children stare wide-eyed at the warm, well-tended cabin. They eat gratefully, silence broken only by the scrape of spoons. Henry attempts a smile, though pride still lingers in his stiff posture. Appreciate this, he mutters. Martha says nothing but squeezes Alice's shoulders with gentle reassurance. After breakfast, the work begins in earnest. 2 sleds are loaded with meticulous care. One holds food, blankets, and emergency packs. The other is reserved for the children when they tire. Ropes are checked twice. Axes and saws are lashed securely in case fallen trees block the trail. Your father gathers everyone near the doorway before departure. His voice is steady, but its weight settles over all. Remember, no one strays. We move as one body. If you feel the cold too deep, speak. Silence kills faster than snow. He glances at Henry, who nods without hesitation this time. Layer upon layer is pulled on wool against the skin, flannel, then fur and canvas. Scarves are wrapped until only eyes remain uncovered. The children's feet are checked twice, socks perfectly dry. Whistles hang from cords around every neck. A final, prayerful silence fills the cabin as your father banks the fire low and closes the stove door. Then the latch is drawn, and bitter air crashes in like an invisible wall. The first steps are heavy. Sled runners groan against the packed trail, and every breath slices like a blade. Yet spirits are steady. The sun, faint but visible, lends a shimmer to the endless white fields. Snow squeaks beneath your boots, the sound that marks the deepest cold. Your father leads, breaking the trail. Henry walks opposite him, pulling the supply sled, his breath coming in hard bursts. You fall in beside Emma, who grips the rope of the second sled where William, Michael, Alice and Peter sit bundled under quilts. Their small faces peek out, eyes wide with mingled awe and fear. Martha and your mother walk behind, keeping constant watch on the children, adjusting scarves, checking for signs of frostbite. Martha whispers, thanks, as your mother tucks an extra wool scrap around Peter's ears. Pride has no place here, only survival. The miles stretch long. Every landmark is greeted with quiet relief, the stand of firs that blocks the wind, the ridge where snow lies shallow, the frozen creek that glitters under the pale Sunday. At each pause for water, your father insists on movement. Stamp your feet, swing your arms, don't let the cold catch you. The adults obey without hesitation, knowing he speaks truth. At one point, Alice begins to sob quietly from the sled, her toes numb despite layers of socks. Emma crouches beside her, whispering gently, wrapping heated stones in rags and tucking them near the child's feet. Within minutes, Alice sighs in relief, her tears freezing to her lashes. By mid-morning, the horizon darkens faintly, a smear of grey that makes your father frown. He studies it with narrowed eyes, then adjusts pace. Weather's shifting faster than I like, he mutters. We'll keep steady. Henderson's is closer than turning back. Henry looks at him, fear flashing briefly, but he says nothing. Trust has grown since the blizzard. The children, lulled by the rhythm of sled runners, grow quiet, some drifting into half-sleep beneath the quilts. Adults exchange few words, saving breath for movement. The silence of the snowfield is broken only by the crunch of boots and the low creak of leather straps. Finally, through the trees ahead, a ribbon of smoke rises into the pale sky. Your father halts, lifts his mittened hand, and points. There, he says simply. The Henderson homestead. Relief ripples through the group. Shoulders straighten despite exhaustion. Even Henry allows a weary grin. Made it, he breathes. But your father's eyes remain sharp, scanning the dim horizon behind. Not yet, he says softly. We're not safe until we're inside. And so the journey continues one last mile across the frozen valley toward warmth, community, and the promise of knowledge shared. The Henderson homestead rises from the snow like a fortress, low roof lines heavy with drifts, smoke rising steady and confident from the broad chimney. The paths around it have been cleared with practiced precision, snow banked high against the walls for insulation. To the exhausted travelers, it looks less like a neighbor's house and more like salvation itself. Your father lifts a hand, signaling the group to pause just before the yard. Even now, procedure is followed. "Let me call first," he says, stepping ahead. Approaching a cabin unannounced in winter is never wise. He cups his hands to his scarf and calls out, "Hendersons! Morrison here with company." The door opens almost at once, and Adam Henderson steps out, coat pulled tight, breath steaming. His broad face breaks into relief. "Thought that storm might have swallowed you. Get inside, all of you, quick." The transition from bitter air to the cabin's warmth is overwhelming. Heat radiates from a massive iron stove at the center, driving the sting from fingers and cheeks. Quilts line the walls, oil lamps cast a golden glow, and the smell of fresh bread mingles with wood smoke. Children already inside shout greetings, their voices a welcome chorus after the long silence of the trail. Martha McClintock sinks onto a bench, pulling Peter into her lap, tears freezing on her lashes before melting in the warmth. Henry, too proud to collapse, leans heavily against the wall, his face grey with fatigue. "We'd never have made it without them," he admits hoarsely, nodding toward your father. Adam clasps your father's hand in both of his. "Smart choice, taking the line shack. That little blow turned fierce faster than anyone thought." Your father only shrugs. "Weather decides. We just follow its lead." Inside, the community gathering unfolds in careful rhythm. Families from across the valley have trickled in, some arriving before the storm, others braving the cold afterward. Boots are lined neatly near the door, outer layers hung to dry. Each family unpacks contributions, jars of pickled vegetables, slabs of smoked venison, sacks of flour, even precious jars of honey. These are placed on a long table, forming a communal spread that no single household could manage alone. Your mother adds her pemmican cakes, dense with dried berries, while Martha quietly contributes a small loaf of white bread, the same kind she had given you days earlier. Despite its modest size, others treat it with reverence, knowing what it cost to part with. Children gather quickly, trading handmade toys and stories of their weeks in snowbound cabins. Emma shows a group of girls her mitten-lining technique, turning worn gloves into tools fit for deep winter. William and Michael join a circle of boys, carving small animals from pine scraps with pocket knives, their laughter echoing beneath the low beams. The adults cluster near the stove, knowledge flowing as freely as the tea that steams in tin cups. Adam Henderson demonstrates his sod roof patching method, explaining how layered moss can halt leaks even in thaw. Mary Henderson spreads wool she spun using a Swedish binding trick, letting the women handle the dense, durable yarn. Your father explains the double wall system of his cabin, and several men nod thoughtfully, already planning to imitate it come spring. But it is not only technical lessons exchanged, there is laughter too, and songs sung softly, and the simple joy of seeing faces outside one's own family after weeks of confinement. For a few hours, the isolation of winter lifts, replaced by warmth not only of fire, but of community. As the meal begins, long benches are pulled close, bowls passed, spoons scraping against iron pots. Hot soup, bread thick with butter, and venison stew circulate, and even the youngest children eat until their bellies are round. The room hums with voices, with gratitude, with relief. Later, as dusk gathers outside, Adam raises his cup. "To winter," he says simply. "It tests us, but it teaches too, and with neighbors like these we stand a chance." Cups lift in answer, voices murmuring assent. You sip from your own, the warmth spreading through your chest, and realize the truth of his words. Winter is no enemy, not if faced with knowledge and with one another. Alone, it devours. Together, it teaches survival. The fire pops, sparks tumbling upward, and for the first time in weeks, you feel something deeper than warmth. You feel safe. The long room is alive with voices, a tapestry of sound woven from laughter, low conversation, and the occasional crackle of the great iron stove. Children dart between benches, their cheeks flushed from warmth and excitement, clutching toys traded like treasures. The adults remain closer to the fire, cups of steaming coffee or tea in hand, their talk moving naturally from weather to livestock to the unspoken subject, always hanging above every frontier household survival. Your father speaks quietly with Adam Henderson, tracing the outline of the valley on a scrap of paper. Prevailing winds funnel right through this gap, he explains, pointing to a narrow pass. Snow piles deep there. Good place to set a trap line, but no place for a cabin. Adam nods, committing the observation to memory. Such knowledge isn't idle chatter, it could save a future homestead from ruin. Nearby, Mary Henderson demonstrates her new spinning technique, drawing wool into yarn so strong, and even that women gather close, marveling. It holds heat better than my old way, she says, passing the sample around, and wastes less fibre. Learned it from the Swensons up north. Each woman studies her hands carefully, memorizing the rhythm, eager to repeat it back home. Skills travel faster than snowstorms in these circles spun across distance, braided into families. Emma sits among girls her age, showing them how she stitched rabbit fur into mitten linings. Her voice, usually quiet, grows firm with confidence. You sew through the pelt, not around it. That way the fur stays in place. One girl gasps softly, feeling the lining. It's warmer than wool. Emma smiles shyly, pride warming her cheeks more than the fire. In this moment, she is no longer just a daughter or sister, she is a teacher. The McClintock family remains quieter than most, still shaken by their narrow escape. Henry speaks sparingly, but Martha leans forward with keen attention to every story, asking questions about food preservation, about smokehouse techniques, about chimney cleaning. The other women answer without hesitation, their voices patient, supportive. They know what it means to be new to winters this fierce. Martha listens as though every word is a lifeline and perhaps it islands. After the meal, the talk turns to stories, lessons wrapped in memory. Old man Patterson, stooped but still sharp-eyed, clears his throat. Winter of 72, he begins, his voice roughened by decades of smoke and frost. I thought I'd outsmart the cold by stockpiling only pine. Burned fast, plenty of flame. By February, chimney near caught fire twice. Learned then what every fool has to heat isn't just about flame. It's about coals, about steadiness. Lost half my woodpile to foolishness. The room chuckles, but no one dismisses his words. Each story, even humorous, carries weight. Your father adds one of his own, his tone even, almost casual. First winter here, I built too small a stack of hay around the cow's stall, thought the thick hide would see her through. Lost her in January when the wind turned. Never again. Now I bank it chest high and double layer it. He takes a slow sip from his cup. Some mistakes you only make once, others you don't live to repeat. Silence follows, heavy but instructive. The children beg for a tale, something less grim. Adam obliges with a memory of sledding down the frozen creek as a boy, his laughter rolling like thunder as he recalls the spill that sent him headfirst into a drift. The youngsters howl with delight, and for a brief moment the harsh edges of winter soften under waves of shared joy. As night deepens, lanterns are trimmed low and the fire fed with heavy oak. Families prepare sleeping spaces on the floor, quilts spread in layers, children already yawning from the excitement of the day. The hum of conversation quiets, replaced by the steady breathing of those dozing near the stove. You lie awake longer than most, staring at the shadows that dance across the log walls. The warmth of the gathering lingers in your chest, warmth not only of fire, but of community, of knowledge freely given and gratefully received. You realize that what you've seen over these days is more than survival. It is a system, an invisible architecture of shared skill and shared sacrifice. Cabins may differ, fires may burn hotter or colder, but together the valley's families weave a net strong enough to catch even the fiercest winter. And as your eyes grow heavy, you think of your comfortable modern bed, your furnace humming quietly, your electric lights casting steady glow. These luxuries are miracles by frontier measure, yet something in you wonders if perhaps we lost more than we gained when we traded moss-filled walls and community wisdom for insulation foam and thermostats. For the pioneers knew something we have forgotten, that survival is never the work of one, but of many, and that the truest warmth on the coldest nights comes not from fire alone, but from neighbors gathered close, telling stories that keep both memory and body alive.